The word legendary is thrown around an awful lot this day and age, and there's only a handful of films that I've seen in my life that I would attribute the word legendary to. Aliens is one, The Terminator is another, and for a third pick, it has to go to John McTiernan's 1987 action horror Predator. This movie sits with pride in that trio of revered films that formed a solid foundation of love for sci-fi, action, and horror in my childhood. It's a movie that, while definitely being a product of its time, has arguably stood the test of time. It unashamedly thrust its over-the-top masculinity and its borderline outrageous action scenes right to the front for the world to see, and it introduced a monster that was original, terrifying, and compelling. Arnold Schwarzenegger plays Dutch, leader of an elite squad of soldiers sent on a Black Ops rescue mission deep into the jungle. But when the team discovers they're being hunted by an almost invisible otherworldly life form, they soon find themselves in a fight for their lives, and quickly realise that their skills and strength pale in comparison to what this extraterrestrial hunter is capable of. For a movie that's about an alien hunter killing off a team of muscle-bound soldiers one by one, and in increasingly gruesome ways, it has a thin but tasty layer of character development that you wouldn't expect to find in a film like this. Thanks to Jim and John Thomas's screenplay, the movie takes some time to actually build some of these characters up before they have their first real encounter with the Predator. Now obviously this isn't some multi-layered, intricately pieced together character study, but it does offer us more than a film of this type usually gives. Right off the bat, we're introduced to a team that is highly trained and functions as a brotherhood with a clear and direct mission. We've got Mac, Blaine, Billy, Poncho, and Hawkins, played respectively by Bill Duke, Jesse Ventura, Sonny Landham, Richard Chavez, and Shane Black. And we have Dylan, played by Carl Weathers, playing a CIA operative overseeing Dutch and his team on their mission. You're always at risk of characters like these just becoming carbon copies of one another, but through their interactions with each other, their environment, and their unique situation, we start to see some of their personalities emerge. Mac and Blaine appear to share a long-standing friendship that seems to have been developed long before this current team was formed. Billy, who hails from Native American ancestry, is a brave and fearless warrior and acts as the team's tracker. Hawkins is the joker of the group, and Dylan shares a friendship and a working past with Dutch, and it's him who recommends Dutch and his team for the job. Dutch is a combat-hardened veteran who leads his team with respect, honour and trust. He's got no issues with taking lives to get the job done, but makes it perfectly clear in the mission briefing that they are a rescue team, and not hired assassins. This tells us that while this team is certainly not to be messed with, they are on the right side of the line, and it immediately sets them up as the heroes to be rooting for. Now let's face it, as much as I genuinely adore the guy, Schwarzenegger has never really been known for his knockout acting abilities, but his performance in Predator is solid. Thanks to the screenplay's magnificent structure, he's able to take this hulking war machine and inject humanity into this character. There's these little nuances in his acting that can easily be missed if you're not paying attention. His expressions gradually shift from confident to unease to downright fear once the full scale of their situation is realised, particularly in the scene where he learns of Hawkins' demise. As the stakes get higher and the situation worsens, Schwarzenegger's acting remains great throughout, particularly in the movie's last act, which I'll get to a little later. But of course, it wouldn't be a Schwarzenegger film without a few classic one-liners to break up the tension.
Stick around. Knock, knock.
You one ugly motherfucker.
And thanks to that sweet layer of simple character development, the deaths of many of the main characters actually hit. Blaine is killed mere meters away from Mac in gruesome style, and this scene treats us to one of the 80's most visceral and awesome displays of sheer dick-swinging firepower I have ever seen. But the movie knows when to actually bring it back down to a more somber tone. Following Blaine's death, Dutch offers his condolences to Mac, and Mac has this simple but heart-wrenching line.
He was, my friend.
In a movie that unashamedly places its gung-ho masculinity front and centre, this one line is all that's needed for us to understand how painful Blaine's death is for him, and just how much he wants his revenge. I think that one of the more overlooked characters is Dylan. I love his redemption arc in this film. After it's discovered that Dylan led Dutch and his team into the mission on dangerously false pretenses, all the trust and respect that Dutch had for Dylan is long gone. But when a failed attempt to trap the Predator results in Mac going on the warpath, Dylan offers to go and try and bring him back to the team while Dutch gets the rest of the team to the helicopter. Dutch's attitude changes from distrust and disdain back to one of respect. Dylan catches up with Mac and the pair try in vain to get the jump on the Predator, but unfortunately for them, they don't get the outcome they want, with Dylan definitely taking the worst of it. I loved Billy's character as this brave warrior who gradually goes from fearless to fearful, but I found his death to be a huge disappointment. The setup for it is tantalising. He meets his end by sacrificing himself so that he can buy Dutch and the few survivors some time to get ahead of the Predator's relentless pursuit. While his death happens off screen, it's heavily implied that Billy put up a brave and noteworthy fight, with the Predator taking a particular shine to his skull to be kept as a trophy. It's just a goddamn shame we didn't get to see this fight on screen. And I'm very well aware that I haven't mentioned Poncho much at all in this review, and that's because, let's be honest, he's just not that interesting. Sorry, Poncho. Anna, played by Elpidia Carrillo, is taken hostage by Dylan after the assault on the enemy camp, believing her to be of value to the operation. She tries to escape but is scared stiff after witnessing Hawkins being ripped apart in front of her. Apart from some exposition hinting that this otherworldly creature has been in the area before, Anna doesn't necessarily do much through the film, but she becomes key to making sure that the rescue helicopter arrives when Dutch orders her to.
Get to the chopper!
Dutch had worked out earlier that the reason she wasn't killed along with Hawkins was because she was unarmed. With this knowledge in mind, he knows full well that the Predator wouldn't hunt her down because there would be no sport in it. So let's take a look at the Predator itself. For me, it is arguably one of the greatest monsters ever created in cinema history. The very concept of an alien life form that is both technologically advanced, yet primitive and primal in its nature fascinates me to no end. And I love that it has some sort of code of honour with its refusal to hunt unarmed prey. Its design is absolutely incredible, and even after all of this time, I still think it's right up there with some of the best costume design, makeup and practical effects to ever grace the screen. It's the little glimpses the movie gives us into the kind of being that it is that really excite me. You get the feeling that while the Predator does see humans as worthy prey, not just because of their aggressive nature, but because of their ability to think and plan, it still has an air of superiority over them thanks to its technological advantages. Its mask allows for thermal vision so it can easily spot prey, and it has next to perfect camouflage which makes it near impossible for humans to see. So while the Predator may very well be the ultimate hunter, it makes you wonder just how good it could be once it's stripped of its advantages. But of course, we see this in the third act, which I'll get to shortly. John McTiernan did an awesome job with directing this movie. Considering the issues with the original Predator suit, not to mention the hostile environments of the on-location shooting, and a host of other obstacles, he crafted a movie that delivered top-tier action, suspense, horror and intrigue. And he managed to put this all into a runtime of less than 2 hours. Its action scenes are fast-paced, violent and utterly entertaining. Its horror and suspense rivals that of the genre's maestros like John Carpenter and Wes Craven, and that is not an easy thing to do, especially when you consider a large portion of this film takes place in the daylight. But where the movie really shines for me is in its last act. At this point, Dutch has lost every member of his team. He's hurt, tired and on the run from the Predator, who is hot on his heels to bag itself the best trophy from its hunt. But Dutch doesn't make it easy. After discovering he can hide from its vision by caking himself in mud to cool his body, Dutch evens the playing field significantly and decides to make a final stand against his nemesis. What's really interesting here is that Dutch is also stripped of his weapons and he's forced to fashion his own and set traps. He is essentially stripped back down to his primitive roots and forces the Predator into dancing to his tune and not the other way around. The Predator becomes increasingly frustrated at not being able to gain an advantage, But when Dutch's mud washes off after falling into the river, the predator can now see him, and it decides to face off against this worthy human face to face, hand to hand. I'll say it again, the design of the predator is flawless. Even after all these years, I still struggle to think of a creature in modern times that comes close to this iconic movie monster. What Stan Winston and his team of spectacular artists managed to do in a short time frame is nothing short of miraculous. And putting the 7'2" Kevin Peter Hall in the costume was the chef's kiss to it. For those interested, there are various videos on YouTube exploring the Predator's original design, which is fucking hilarious by the way, and watching these really underscores how important that redesign was. Imagine if they had stuck with the original design. I somehow suspect the film wouldn't have done nearly as well as it did. So as for the ending, Dutch manages to outwit the Predator and crushes it under one of his traps, severely wounding it. The Predator, realising it's been defeated, has one final trick up its sleeve. It activates a self-destruct device in the hope that it takes Dutch out as well, but Dutch manages to survive by the skin of his teeth. The rescue chopper arrives with Anna and his general on board to pick him up, but the movie does something rather interesting with its final shot. Rather than showing its hero as a clear and obvious victor, Dutch is transported away in the chopper, looking out at the jungle with tired and sorrowful eyes. He might have defeated the Predator, but it came at a very high price. It cost him his team. It cost him his friends. It cost him every ounce of strength and guile he had, and ultimately it cost him the life he once had, because after all of this, nothing will ever be the same for him again. Predator is a fantastic movie. Yes, it is a product of its time, but I still firmly believe that it has aged remarkably well. It's well shot, it's well structured, and its creation helped to spawn an entire expanded universe within the comic and novel communities, with many crossovers with other legendary movie franchises such as Aliens, The Terminator, and a host of others. Its sequels are exceptionally hit and miss to say the least, and it's such a shame, because I genuinely believe there is a plethora of stories and narratives that could be used to make another brilliant Predator film. Watching it always takes me back to the good old days, and despite one or two little faults I have with it, there's certainly not enough to sour this movie for me in any way. I bloody love it.